Alright, so today I want to talk a little bit about the Ninja 650. This is my second bike. I originally had a 2009 Ninja 250. That was my first bike. Very small bike. I did have a lot of fun on it though. And for a first bike, it was a little too small for my liking, even for a first bike. But I upgraded. And this is the Ninja 650. And this is what I upgraded to. It's not a 4-cylinder. It's very torquey for what it is. And I would say if you want something similar to like an MT-07, but you want a sport bike look, this is what you want to get. You can wheelie this thing no problem in first and second gear. I've even seen some people wheelie it third gear. I definitely don't know how to do that. I'm still learning how to wheelie second gear. But this is basically a sporty MT-07 or FZ-07, whatever. It's basically a sporty version. Now obviously if you're a seasoned rider, if you've got 636s or a CBR 600 or something, this is going to be a little lackluster for you. But if you are on a, you know, a 300, maybe you're on a Grom, whatever, if you're just starting out, this is a great second bike. Or if you want to get a bike to practice wheelies, this is also a great bike to do so. Now, I would honestly say just practice on a Grom, but sport bike wheelies look a lot cooler than Grom wheelies. So, great bike to practice that on, for sure. I've had a lot of fun learning mine, I know that. I would say this is the perfect second bike. Maybe first bike. You could get away with this being your first bike because it's not super powerful. Actually, I would go as far as say this is a good first bike. It's definitely gonna be, you know, a little harder to get used to. I would always recommend go up in increments. Don't just go straight to a 4-cylinder, or I wouldn't even say straight to a 650. You totally could. The reason I say that is it's kind of pros and cons. It teaches you to be more defensive and more conservative with your riding, but on the other hand, it also teaches you to ride extremely careful the bigger bike you start with. So if you start with 1000cc, first of all, never do that. But if you start with an 1000cc, you're gonna be riding so careful, it's gonna take away a lot of the fun from it, because you're gonna be like kind of freaking out. You don't want to give it too much throttle. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. Whatever. And you're gonna just end up riding way too carefully and build that as a habit, and you're not really gonna have a lot of fun on your bike. If you start with a small bike, it's something you can handle and it's something you can get confident with quick. That's why I would say start with something like a 300 if you're very beginning, or even a Grom. A Grom is a perfect start bike. Start with something like that, then move to something like this after you get confident. Because this, it's a big enough jump where, you know, for the first couple days or weeks, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, like, this is quite a bit of power. But after that, you're going to get confident quickly. Whereas if you go from a CBR 300 to a ZX10, you are going to be super overwhelmed by the power, and you're not going to want to take deep leans. You're not going to want to give it much throttle. You're going to be a slow, boring rider. That's how I look at it. And look, if you're just riding to cruise around, you don't care about maneuvering at all, like no matter what you ride, you're just gonna go under the speed limit, maybe just some windy roads, it won't be as big of a deal. But that's probably no one riding motorcycles. Everyone who rides a motorcycle wants to have fun with it, wants to, you know, push it around and lean it and accelerate it fast, all of that. And if you start with something that's too powerful for yourself, you're not going to feel comfortable doing those things that the motorcycle is meant for. and you're just gonna end up being a boring rider, and you're not gonna have as much fun as if you properly learn and go in increments. And this bike is a perfect second increment. This is probably the second bike you want to go with. This is just a step behind a ZX6 or CBR 600, whatever. This is just about a step behind those. Technically, an R7 is more powerful, but like they're in the same class pretty much. The R7 has a little more CC. They're pretty much in the same class. You don't want to be going straight to a 600 cc for your second bike, you know, because that's going to be a little overwhelming. But you also don't want to go from a 300 to a 400, because that's going to be way underwhelming. You're barely even going to notice a difference. That's where the MT-07s come in, the Ninja 650s come in, that's where the R7s come in. The only reason I'm talking about the Ninja 650 specifically is because I have it and I can speak for it. That's why. But really, if you start with a 300, a 400, get a R7, get a Ninja 650, you know, get an MT or FZ07. You know, most people want to ride sportier bikes though, so that MT won't give you that sportier look. That's where these bikes come in. I have a buddy that's about to start on a CBR 1000 RR. I don't know why he's doing that. I even asked him, I'm like, why are you starting on a leader bike? And he's like, I might start on a I might get a 636. And I'm like, why are you starting on a 600 cc? Why are you starting with such big bikes, you know? I know everyone wants to get a bike and have fun, and they see these bigger bikes and they see these videos of them and they go fast and they get excited, and you know, they want to get one, so they start saving and they just go big or go home right away. It'll just end up in them not having as much fun as they thought they would. It's more powerful than you think, and if you go up in increments and get really comfortable with your current bike, you will be golden. Man, by your fourth bike, you'll have an 1000 cc easy, and you'll get comfortable on it relatively quickly. If you get, let's say, a 300, then a 650 or 700, and then a 600 or a 636, and then you get like a CBR 1000, dude, you will be fine, and you will have so much more fun on that CBR 1000 because you're not going to psych yourself out. Really, really recommend going in increments. If you don't, you might just have a little less fun. Ultimately, you can start on whatever bike you want. It all depends on how much throttle you give it and how much control you have over your throttle and over your clutch, which is also very important, because if you let off your clutch too fast while you're trying to accelerate on a leader bike, especially if you're new, you're looping it. That's the only way to put it. You are going to loop it if you let off your clutch too fast with a leader bike. With this bike, if I let it off way too fast, it might pop up a little bit, maybe. Most of the time it just like jolts forward and I come back like that. Like, I have to try to get the wheel off the ground. Man, with a leader bike, you can be going in second at 35 miles an hour and just give it some throttle and that's coming up, you know? That's why you have to slowly go more powerful. It's like when I hopped on my 250, I was like, man, this is a sport bike. The only thing I rode before then is a Grom, you know? I just rode it around a little bit. When I got on my 250, I'm like, this is a sport bike. Wow, what the heck? It took a little bit to get used to the feeling of a bike, you know? It wasn't that powerful, but it was still a bike. Hopped on the 650, and I'm not expecting it to like start up that fast. So it kind of like took me back. I was like, what the heck? I didn't expect it, you know? Because what I'm used to is a 250. I wasn't used to a 650. So it took a couple weeks for me to really get confident, really get used to it. Now imagine I went from my 250 to an 1000. I would still be getting used to it, and I would be driving like a loser. I'd be riding like a loser because I wouldn't be able to have any fun on it, you know? It even took a little while for me to get comfortable with taking deep leans on this thing. For me, deep. I don't take that deep of leans anyway, but for me, bump. For me, deeper leans, you know? And it took a minute, and I can't imagine if I would have just jumped to a 636 even, or a 600 from my 250. I would have not been comfortable, and I would have not had as much fun. And the nice thing with properly upgrading is it gives you something to look forward to, right? After I got comfortable with this bike, I started looking forward to a 600cc, you know? I'm looking forward to that. I'm not gonna get it right now or anytime soon, but I'm now looking forward to that, and it's something that I can actually get at some point. If you are starting on a 600cc, it's gonna take you forever to get used to that thing. And after you do get used to it, since you didn't, you know, upgrade in proper increments, you're gonna be too afraid to get an 1000cc because you know how it felt when you got the 600cc. That's my opinion on it. That's what I think. If you wanna just go straight to a 600 or straight to an 1000, you can do that. It's not against the law or anything. You can totally do that. I'm just not recommending it for your safety and your enjoyability of the bike. That's all I have to say. Thank you everybody for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you can see when I upload next. I upload once every week on the weekend, most likely Saturday. So yeah, make sure you subscribe. And also, go subscribe to the socials. It's the link in the bio. You can go there. All my socials are listed there. Go follow them. All right, I'm out. Later.